Previously on the Fan of History, Greece slowly emerged from the Dark Age. Sparta was founded, and the most powerful cities in Greece were Chalcis and Lefkandi on the island of Euboea. So we're gonna talk about the 70s BC, and I must tell you, I'm getting really excited because this century contains so many great events, and this is an event I have wanted to talk about for a long time. You should watch the Great Civilizations of the World in 800 BC video to set the stage for this, but let's talk about interesting stuff. First, I always start with mentioning the most powerful king in sort of the Western world. And for these years, it is Argishti, the king of Urartu. We have his full annals. I talked about him a lot in last episode. He's the 6th king of Urartu, but we'll talk very little about the Neo-Assyrian Empire and Urartu in this episode, because this episode will be almost all about archaic Greece. But before we start to talk about archaic Greece, we have to mention a comparison. The Chalcis is the most powerful city-state in Greece. But compared to Urartu, it's like a small village compared to a superpower. So Greece is still very small and very non-powerful. There is no projection of Greek power really outside of Greece yet. But in order to talk about Greece, I first have to introduce a few more city-states. By the end of this century, I should have introduced all the major city-states. But now let's talk about Corinth. You can see Corinth on the map, on the red spot. We talked about Sparta, we talked about the Euboean cities. It is very hard to date anything. The Greeks still they don't have writing yet. They have forgotten how to write. But we know from archaeology a lot of stuff. For example, we know that the Kaltoheria Acria was established north of Corinth in 800 BC. There is a specific style of Corinthian decoration, and that style spreads through the Gulf of Corinth, that is westwards on the water. And this influence is felt in a large part of Greece. Corinth is quite powerful. There is a king in Corinth, but this kingship is abandoned or modified in 780 BC. There is also a war between Corinth and Megara. And look at the strategic location of Corinth. By controlling the isthmus, the piece of land there, they control land travel into the Peloponnese. And they will also be able to project naval power to the east very soon. But this spread of Corinthian influence in the Gulf of Corinth, it reaches to Delphi. You can see Delphi to the north of the map. Delphi has been a place of worship since long before the Dark Age, but Delphi will reappear very strongly now and become one of the most important sacred sites in Greece for a long time. And that is mainly because of the greatest scam in archaic Greece, the Oracle at Delphi. I'll talk more about the Oracle in future episodes, but it is such a fascinating story because it's so strange. Okay, let's talk about another important Greek city-state that you might have heard of. It's Athens. I couldn't move the red dot here, but Athens is, if you move from the red dot to the right, you'll find Athens on the peninsula of Attica. Athens is unique among Greek city-states because Athens survived the Dark Age. Athens was there before the Dark Age and it's still there, but times have been tough, and Athens at times in the 11th and the 10th century BC was only a small village, and all the other population centers in Attica died out, or most of them at least. But now Athens is coming back, and it's evidenced by fresh cemeteries found in the archaeological evidence. But Athenian pottery is not spreading into Greece because it's being outcompeted by Corinthian pottery. I'm sure that Athens had contact with the Phoenicians. They surely have contact with Chalcis, which is, you see the island of Euboea to the upper right on this map. But and it could be possible that the Athenians were pirates at this point. There is a lot of sanctuaries popping up in Attica. There's actually sanctuaries popping up all over Greece. And we'll talk more about that in this episode. There is a guy called Agamestor. He's said to have been the archon, the ruler of Athens, between 796 and 778 BC. And we actually have records of kings and archons going back to before the Dark Age, but I don't know how reliable they really are. So, back to the main event in 776 BC in Olympia. Olympia is in the western part of the Peloponnese. It's named after Mount Olympus, the highest mountain in mainland Greece. I think this site is on the slopes of the mountain. The tradition of the Olympic festival and the first Olympic Games in 776 BC is supported by archaeological evidence, so this date might very well be correct. There is a small likelihood that these games have been going on for much longer than this, even 200 years before this, but 776 BC is a good starting point, I think. There is a town, a village, friends of it call it a city, called Elis, and it is close to this place and they control this area. So the city of Elis controls the games. And they send out heralds all over the Greek world to announce the games and the Olympic truce. So, the Olympic Games will be a Pan-Hellenic Games. Everybody that is a Greek can come to these games. And the Greeks will keep their time records based on these Olympic Games. So they say, in the year of the 10th Olympiad, and that means 740 BC, for example. There is a religious festival going on at the same time as the games. The games are part of this ritual. And it's of the cult of Zeus, the main god. The Olympic Games will be going on for a very long time, until the age of the Roman Emperor Theodosius the Great. And Theodosius the Great, who I want to talk about on this show, but that's far in the future, he is a Christian, and he is a fanatic Christian, and he bans the Olympic Games because they are pagan. So that's the end of the ancient Olympics. There were other games in Greece, a lot of other games actually, but the Olympics will rise to be the most important. Every free male Greek citizen is entitled to participate, but not many do, so I wonder really how open they were. Married women were not allowed to watch the games, so remember that when the Olympic comes on TV next time. No married women are allowed to watch them. Unmarried women could attend the games, and there are records of women participating in the games. And I think the first women that participate in the games are Spartans, because who wants to say no to a Spartan woman? The whole first Olympic Games was just a single day with a single event, the stadium race. This is a race that is only 180 meters long, so the whole event must be over in I don't know how fast people run on that, but maybe 25 seconds. And that's it! That's the first Olympics. But before I give you the results of the first Olympics, we have to talk about why these Pan-Hellenic Games, the Olympics and other games, why they were important for Greece. As I said, there was a truce during the games, so you could travel freely across Greece, even through enemy territory. And nobody broke this peace until the Spartans did, but that's a lot later. So this is an opportunity for diplomacy and trade, and everybody who is anything will be at the Olympic Games. So you could discuss political issues, you can make alliances, treaties. It sort of becomes sort of a council for ruling Greece as a whole. And it was also a very important place for trade, and artists would come to the games to look for patrons. So the games in themselves would help establish writing and culture. But as I said, we do not have writing yet. So there is also a Pan-Hellenic identity that starts to form in the early, maybe even in the late 9th century BC, but in the early 8th century BC, people in Greece are starting to consider themselves Hellenes. Nobody considers themselves a Greek because that's a Roman word. they have a common religion. They worship the same gods. It's a merge of the Dorian and the Chian gods, but it's starting to become the same. People are forgetting that they're Dorians or Achaeans, and now they are becoming Hellenes. And they all share an intense concern for an older era, the heroic age, the age before Dark Age. The Trojan War. There's a lot of works on the Trojan War. The Iliad is not the only one, and it doesn't even cover the whole Trojan War. But there's the Iliad, the Odyssey, the Cypria, and the Aethiopies. A language of epic, a form of poetry starting to develop, but writing will help this a lot, and yeah, we don't have writing yet. And I will talk to you in this century about Homer and Hesiod, who wrote works and days. There is also going to be a major population explosion, and this will lead to colonization, much more colonization. And colonization is pretty similar depending on, no matter where you are in Greece, the process of colonization looks the same if you're not in Sparta, because Sparta is always different. And we'll discuss a lot of this in the events of the 730s BC. So let's get back to these Olympics. The stadium race, those 25 seconds, they are won by Koroibos. He's a cook from Elis, and he wins! Go Koroibos! First victor of the Olympic Games. And after winning, he's praised. There is a herald that announces his name, his father's name, and his homeland. The Hellanodokis, the Greek judge, places a palm branch in his hand. And the spectators cheer and throw flower at him. They tie red ribbons in his hair as a mark of victory. And this is immense glory, but there is no material award. Later, people who won the Olympics would be titled Olympic victor, even when they appear in other circumstances. So, for example, you could be like, I am the ruler of that town, and I am an Olympic victor, and ooh. And the city-states really wanted people from their city-state to win, so they pay the winners if they win. And in 600 BC, Athens would pay 500 drachmae to a winner. And this was enough to last a lifetime. So being a winner of the Olympic Games, it's really, really important. But remember as well, we don't have coins yet. There is no money in Greece. And sadly, I don't have the results of all the Olympic Games. If somebody could help me find them, because I have a feeling that they can be preserved. I found certain victors, but if there is a full list of the winners of the Olympics, I will share it for every Olympic Games, but I don't have the results of the Olympic Games in 772 BC, so I will not cover them. Meanwhile, in India, we don't know anything about the winners of the athletic events. In fact, we know very little at all. Because in India, they don't have writing either. What they have is a lot of religious mambo-jumbo preserved. So what comes down to us is the first Upanishads and the knowledge that Panchala is the major Aryan kingdom. When I started out Fan of History, I was so excited to learn more about Indian history, but there's just no information, and it's very frustrating. And sadly, there won't be a lot of information before 500 BC. There will be some in the age of Buddha, but yeah, that's the state of India, I'm sorry. Next time, we'll talk about China. It's the fall of the Western Zhou dynasty. King Yu is gonna have problems. Please subscribe, like and share this. I want more people to find out about this Fan of History show. I have a lot of problems reaching out, and I think it seems that you guys who have found it, some of you really like it. So I think there are more people out there who would be interested in this narrative. Please help me find them. Thank you for watching.